wanted to welcome Doug, a longtime friend and colleague. Doug used to be the director of Everactive Schools, and we worked side by side. Wow. And I remember when I started at Everactive 6 years ago, Doug and I talked, and he was the one that came up with it first. We should do something in the summer. We should have an institute, some PD for phys ed teachers. We should do something. And so it's here, and we had to bring him back to do this because not only he's a great guy, he's a great speaker and facilitator. So I want to introduce to you Doug Gleddie. He's at the U of A right now, professor of elementary education and physical education. Mm-hmm. So you can pick his brain, I'm sure, after over lunch. Are you staying for lunch?
Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't pass that up. No.
Free lunch, come on.
So welcome, Doug.
Hey, awesome. Thanks, Grace. It is really, really cool to see something that, we've talked about it as a phys ed group for a long time. Can we do some kind of summer institute, some kind of piece? And I'm going to put just a very shameless plug in at the moment. What we're hoping to do with the vision for this a little bit too and working together is to essentially take this 2 days, expand it to 5, and make it a graduate level course, so that you can get credit for it and you can sign up through. I'm currently working with the chair and the graduate coordinator in my department to try and get my kind of thought around it is a phys ed focused Master of Education, but couched in a health promoting schools context framework. So bringing this, because there isn't really anything out there right now. You can do a master's in phys ed, say from Memorial University. They've got a great online program, but it's all online. So it's very much in the makings, but we're hoping to have 2 courses offered next summer. And just so you know, if you're thinking of a master's degree at some point in time, I mean, obviously you can do it anywhere else, but why would you not do it at U of A? No. But it would be a combination of online and face-to-face like this in the summer, so that you can do your courses on your own time. It would all be asynchronous. In other words, you don't have to be at a computer at a certain time to do stuff. And so that's kind of the broad vision. If you want to talk more about it, love to hear your thoughts. I did have a meeting with about 7 or 8 teachers about what they would like in some program like this. So I have some initial thoughts and notes, and I don't want to create something for me. I want to create something that, or I don't want to create something alone. I want to co-create something that works for people who are interested in this. So that's just something to keep in the back of your minds if you're interested at that point in time. Anyways, I was asked to speak on 2 topics. So the first one is the affective side of physical literacy. But before we're going to do that, I think you need to wake up a little bit. So we're going to do a little wake up activity. So if you want to just stand up, push your chairs in, you can stay right where you are. Hopefully you haven't done this one yesterday. What? You do any Energizers yesterday? Yeah. What'd you do? Math? Rock, paper, scissors, math? Yeah. Okay, anything else? 1 Energizer, seriously?
Music. Move to music.
Oh, and then you did, Glenn worked you over in the gym. Okay, fair enough. That'll work. Okay, so this one's just really simple little Energizer, do with your class in the middle of class and whatever you want to do. And it's a natural progression. So does anyone know the tune to head, shoulders, knees, and toes? Okay, we're not using that tune. But we're going to use the actions from head and shoulders, knees, and toes, okay, in reverse. And then we're going to use the music from If You're Happy and You Know It. Do you know that one? Okay, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Okay, so the way it works is this way. It's I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. See the natural progression there? Mm-hmm. There it is. Okay, good. So alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. So it's going to go like this. I'm alive, touch your toes. Awake, touch your knees. Alert, touch your shoulders. Enthusiastic. Pretty simple. I'm going to throw one little twist in part with you. We'll do it really slow to start. Everyone ready? Here we go. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert. I'm alert. Sorry, I messed it up. Let's restart. Ready? Here we go. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert. I'm alert, awake, alive. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. That's why I got twisted up there. Right? Okay, that's not bad. Okay, all right, medium speed. And more singing, please. You have the mic shut off right now, don't you? Okay. I'm alive, awake, alert. Okay. Ready? Here we go. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert. I'm alert, awake, alive. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. Okay, warp speed. Ready? And go. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. I'm alive, awake, alert. I'm alert, awake, alive. I'm alive, awake, alert. All right, you can have a seat again. I like. All I heard was. That was good. So here's our plan of attack for the next, well, roughly hour. I don't want to talk a lot in this session because there's a heck of a lot of wisdom in the room. You all have a wealth of experience. You have your own story around your relationship with physical activity, with phys ed, and therefore with physical literacy. So I'm going to take you through a process that I use with my students to try and look at this, and then we're going to apply it to what happens with physical literacy. And I'll explain more as we go, but I want you to get going. So here's what we're doing. We've already woken up, I hope. Okay. I want to take some time to get to your story. And to do that, we're going to speed date. Okay, that's why the candles are here. You may have noticed there was an index card. There was an index card. You should be sitting across from someone. If not, we'll adjust. We'll add some people. We should have enough chairs to get everyone in. If not, we can add another table. We don't want anyone out of the speed dating loop. Okay, so, and the purpose of that is simply for you to interact with people on a personal level and really take a look at why you're here, essentially. Okay, because again, we all come here with different stories. We'll roll that into some small and large group discussions on these themes. Okay. And then we'll apply this to teaching affectively. How many are familiar with the term affective? A little bit? Okay. So if you went through and you did, depending in your course of studies, you may have talked about the three. There's psychomotor part of phys ed, right? There's cognitive, and there's affective. So could someone define for me what affective is? Joyce had her hand up. Go for it.
Emotional, spiritual. I can't remember. It's emotional side thing.
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's that feeling piece. So where does this come in physical education? Any thoughts? Sorry, say again, Joyce.
How the student feels about the experience.
Absolutely, the feelings there.
I was going to just say the same thing, self-esteem and what we contribute to the child's part of their...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the pink.
A bit of a combination of the body kinesthetic along with the emotional feelings, so to help them make those connections, like this is where my body is at physically, this is how I'm feeling emotionally.
Yeah, and without going, I'll take that one first.
Also connecting with the environment while being physically active.
And the thing is that we're still experiencing the pain of mind-body dualism. And I won't get into everything, but it's basically that everything happens separately, right? So that when you were doing ABC Fitness with Glenn yesterday, all you were working was your body. Really? No. You're thinking about things, you're feeling, you're relating to other people, you're in an environment, you're doing all this kind of stuff. So even though I'm talking about the affective side, we're pulling it out and looking at it in detail, this all happens together. And so we'll get to that idea and then we'll finish off there. So essentially, this is how the speed dating is going to work. So you're going to have a date, and I really need you to focus on the person that's sitting directly across from you. Does anyone not have a date right now or not have a chair? There's a spot there. We can add 2 more chairs in the end. I've got more. Let's just make sure everyone's got a spot. Awesome. All right, so I know some of you started dating already. You're very eager. It's obviously been a while. So essentially, I'm going to have you just 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. I'm going to put on some nice, I'm almost out of Barry White, but I'll find some other nice soft music for you. And really focus on the person. It's hard in this environment when you're close to other people, but focus on your discussion. So here's the process. You have 2 things you can discuss. It doesn't matter one or the other as you go through. But first of all, what's your experience with finding joy in movement? And I'm not going to explain that any further than it is because I want you to interpret it however you interpret it. Okay? What is your experience with joy in movement? What's your background? What do you do now? All that kind of stuff. Your experience is past, present, future. Then, same thing with phys ed, physical activity. What's your experience? Just share a little bit. As you go along, just Feel free to ramble along through your conversation. Feel free when you move to your next date, you can continue on your conversation. You can start a brand new one. You might choose an area to connect. It's totally up to you. What I want you to do though is I'll shut the music off after every 4 or 5 minutes. And when that happens, I don't want you to talk anymore, but I want you to, on your index card, I just want you to write down one thing that's stuck in your head. One thing. Don't talk about, oh, what's your one thing? Don't do that. Your one thing. It doesn't have to be the same. You don't have to share it with the other person, just your one piece, okay? Excellent. So, then we'll kind of rotate around the table. We've got, we're going to leave one person stationary at the very back of the room, okay? And then, so you can leave your stuff where it is. You can come back to your chair again later, but just rotate with your card. Okay, perfect. Okay, any questions before we get going? We're going to go counterclockwise on this side. And I'm sorry I didn't catch your name at the very back. Maria. And Maria's going to stay in that spot, and we'll rotate around Maria. So we'll kind of, you'll go there, and you'll go out to that chair and come through. Oh, and we've got 2 more out there. We'll make it work. Okay, we'll rotate, and this table will just rotate around. We're only going to go about 6 times through. I think you can handle this. Okay, and you're off. Okay, stop dating. Ceasefire. 1 key point on your card. 1 key point. No discussing. Discussing. 1 key point. 1. And then you're going to move in a counterclockwise fashion for those of you who still remember what counterclockwise is. The big hand points towards the move to your right. Okay, stop again. 1 point. 1 point. No more discussion. 1 point. No clarification with your partner. Just 1 point. Stopping talking. Those of you that can read upside down well, please refrain. And then we'll move over another spot. Okay, time to cease fire again. Stopping, talking. 1 point, thank you. Very good. Tracy, stop talking, thank you. Very good. Are you saying your last date wasn't? Okay. Now you're making things up. It's okay. And then move when you're ready. We got a couple more. That was number 3, I think, right? Okay, time to write again. Stopping the talking, starting the writing. Notice how they get harder and harder to stop every time? Yeah. Okay, you're writing. 1 key point. Oh, wow, that was good. And I think we'll make this one our last date. Yep, feel free to move if you're done your jotting down, just sliding around. We got the movement down. Okay, 1 more key point on your card. 1 last key point. And when you're finished that key point, just place your card on top of your head with your hand on top of your card. Just 'cause.
Am I the only one? Like, seriously?
Oh, no,
Like a joke, or-
2. No, I got 2. 3.
From my right side.
Yeah, don't forget your card. Close enough. So you can put your cards down. What we're going to do now is, what I'd like you to do is if there's a candle in front of you, if you can extinguish it and just leave it there. Because there's, I shouldn't have brought scented ones, but very good. And I'll collect those after the wax is cooled a bit. The next step here, we're going to move into groups to discuss. So what I'll do is that the first 6 people in each group here are going to scooch up forward a little bit, okay, to be one group. The next 6 people are going to scooch together a little bit to be a second group. And then if I can get 2 people from that group to come here, essentially in your small group, we're just going to take about 5 minutes to have just a short discussion. Look at we'll call them themes, but look at your card notes. Share them with your compatriots, just back and forth, a very loose, free discussion. What did you find out about joy of movement? What did you find out about people's experience with phys ed, physical activity? So just have 5 minutes of discussion. Be prepared, just someone from your table, we're not going to go in any particular order and say this table share now, but just be prepared to throw out some key ideas that come out of your conversation. Okay, focusing on joy of movement and experience of phys ed, physical activity. Go for it. So you should have all groups of 6 around here, more or less. Perfect. Okay, let's you know, the thing with educators, and I use that term in a broad sense, but once you get them talking, they're really hard to shut up, but which is good, because one of the reasons I like this format for things is quite often you don't get a chance to share with other people what you're doing or what you're feeling or what's going on. So this is a chance to meet some people, have a little bit of a conversation. So let's just share a little bit back and forth. What are some of the kind of common threads, themes that are coming out in these discussions about joy of movement and experience with phys ed, physical literacy? Anyone? Any table? What are some things that popped up?
I'll start. What I found, being one of the elder statesmen here, is how many of these young teachers are so passionate and wanting to become that phys ed specialist, wanting to become that champion. And when I said we need to somehow, the people like Glenn, myself, Mary, in our positions need to utilize that, because everyone I talk to, well, like I asked Christy right now, she teaches grade 1, would you be the phys ed specialist at your school? In a heartbeat, she told me. So I think that's really positive. Like we have this passion here, this knowledge, this expertise.
Yeah, and why don't we in this province have phys ed specialists, especially at elementary? Yeah.
I found that most of the people that love movement started as a kid, whether it was competing, whether it was whatever sport they were in, and we were talking about how kids are meant to move and kids want to move, and how we start to lose that in junior high, and how can we get these kids carrying that all the way through to adulthood?
Yeah, because we do really train it out of kids, right? Here's your chair, buckle up your seatbelt, don't move for the next 13 years. Really?
Yeah.
Right? Other thoughts? Yeah.
I talked to some people that didn't have a positive experience or weren't athletic growing up. And so just as a teacher to keep that in mind, that when, 30 kids walk in, not all of them are happy to be in the gym and excited. You have to bear in mind that there are those ones that are scared and worried, and so just to make sure you're meeting the needs of the kids that want to be there as well as the kids that are worried about being there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Right, and that gets into that affective side, because if you're not prepared affectively, that's going to inhibit your psychomotor movements. It's going to inhibit your cognitive process as you go through. So that's that holistic piece, right? We're dealing with the whole child.
That's even by providing a well-rounded program too, by having juggling, by having sports stacking, by having just a wide variety of activities.
Absolutely.
For all to experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talked with some of the people we were with about how important it was when you were doing those activities. So first of all, the memory of having those activities when you're young, and then you can reclaim them when you're a little bit older. But also in building them, if you've never done them before, how important it is to have the expertise to teach you how to do it properly. And then the muscle memory can come back. Like, so running was one example. I was never a runner, but now I'm learning the proper technique. And so that's something I never learned before. So how important it is to have specialists, particularly at the elementary level, because those are the skills that can come back.
Well, and that's, I don't know how much I'm really sorry I couldn't have come yesterday, but I had to be vacationing in Jasper, so it's horrible. But that's that relationship between the confidence and competence, right? It's a cyclical relationship all the way through, because you you can't have confidence in something unless you have some competence to get there. And even a little bit gets you there, and then you keep that loop going. And the nice thing with that is then you can take that confidence, competence in running, and you can start to transfer that to something else, which is very cool. A couple other thoughts if they're there, yeah?
I just enjoy having used the word joy with physical education and just the connection, the life skill for our students. We're going through tough stuff. I know with my own kids, sometimes just go for a run already, you know, like just that importance as a coping mechanism with hard things in life.
Yeah.
Physical activity is one of our major tools. And so that our job here is really, really important to inspire that love and that kids, it's a go-to for the kids.
Yeah. So I'm not going to ask for a show of hands or anything, but I'm going to make a pretty large assumption, and you can kind of make eye contact and give a subtle nod or something, but I'm pretty confident that everyone in this room has had at least one joyful experience with movement. Pretty sure. There may be some people here who haven't, so that's why I don't want big hands going up. But that's where we're going. That's where we're getting to. So the next little project, unless there's other comments, I don't want to shut it down. But Tracy only gave me a certain amount of time. So. Okay, I just have 3 quotes for you, and it's a very interesting piece. And if you're interested in I'll just give you 3 quotes. I just want you to read it, and then just react in your group. Just discuss in your group, just 2-3 minutes, and then we'll just throw out some comments about it. So here's the first one. I'll just read it out, and I got to put this up here. Calling the class physical education was a joke. The lesson I was learning about my physical body was that it was useless, inferior, and quite possibly infected with a cootie-like virus. We should have been learning about how complicated and capable our bodies were and how to make them healthier. Instead, we were playing dodgeball. And this comes from a Slate.com article by Jessica Olin, whose talk basically said, no team sports in phys ed ever. That was her title of the article. So just discuss in your group. What do you think? Okay, I'm going to keep these fairly brief. I know they're quick discussions. Hopefully you can continue these discussions a little bit as we go along, or at least bring them back to your school. So a couple thoughts from some groups. Reactions?
I told them, like, I was on Twitter when this whole blew up.
Yeah.
Like internationally, there were teachers from China making comments about it, and responding to this experience, and trying to almost dissect, well, what was going on? What was she feeling?
Yeah.
What happened when she was in that environment? And kind of like we said at the end, like it seems like as if it was a reaction to her experience, but there was never a genuine, what can we do to make it better?
No. It was a very interesting piece because I just happened to stumble upon it. I posted it on Twitter, and if you're not on the phys ed community Twitter group at all, I highly encourage it. It's awesome. We can talk later, but it went out, and there was, like Colin said, this whole tweet storm basically around this. But her article on Slate.com got well into 1.2, 1.3 million likes on there. And so obviously there's an issue. If you're interested in reading, I responded to it officially and sent it to Jessica Olin as well as the editor. I also asked the editor of Slate.com, the health thing, if there was opportunity to write a rebuttal article, because this is just one piece there. But if you're interested, I can share with you the blog link. I wrote a blog on this, but it's...
Well, it's in the journal, isn't it? In the Runner?
Yes, it is actually.
Yeah, I've got the
Yeah, yeah. So it just, yeah. More comments.
That she said variety is, the spice of life. And so in this class, in the classes that she was in, obviously, it doesn't seem like there was variety. And maybe it was a very team, sports-based program, including dodgeball.
Yeah.
And so it makes me think maybe each sport was taught to one. And that's very common, actually, to have more than 10 lessons of one unit, which the research states it should be 6 to 10 lessons. 6 lessons of a unit is great. 10, stop, do something else.
Yeah. Tracy here.
If I had to guess, I mean, this isn't unusual, but I would guess this particular teacher was probably a fantastic classroom teacher and was, told to go into the gym and teach phys ed. And maybe was doing the best that they could do in that situation. And I think, again, we have the wrong people in the wrong places. We have these passionate, knowledgeable phys ed specialists in the high schools and in the junior highs to do that. And they're not at the age when they're making this big difference, you know. And this probably was a very good teacher in the classroom and just doing the best they could in the gym, you know,
Yeah.
had no skills and no knowledge and no, you know, so.
And I will probably guarantee you, I would almost put money on it, that she was taught by a specialist, because she's American, and it's pretty much specialist there, but depends what you determine as specialist. But yeah, that's her experience. Another comment? I saw a hand creeping up.
I don't know how to do it, but it's also like the useless, inferior, like virus often has to do with how they treat each other in phys ed. And so to pay attention somehow to treating each other well in games.
Yeah.
So like you'll hear, we talked about how you group so that kids can choose. I'm going to be, in my classes, like, hey, if you're hardcore, I learned that at Interactive. If you want to play hardcore, go in this group. If you want to be skills-based and be a bit friendlier with people, go over here. And immediately, that has been a place where my CUNY-like students feel safe and play harder because they don't feel so intimidated or whatever. But so I guess, and then learning how to respect people from where they're at is part of our job as phys ed teachers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to do it well yet. And how to
Well, it's that whole, I mean, there's a whole piece on teaching personal and social responsibility through phys ed, right? And there's a big piece of that, and a lot of that is that affective piece. How do we feel? How do we interrelate? How do we treat people? And if you read her whole article, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of self-esteem, self-confidence issues there that came out in phys ed. I don't think were caused by phys ed, but came out in phys ed for sure. Last comment, maybe?
Just talking on that, how it can be part of the assessment for the outcome. To have that front and foremost. So your team play, your participation, so, and the students know what's expected. And so when the behavior is inappropriate, even to bring it back to the rubric and go, oh, where would that be shown in the rubric?
Yeah.
Cooperating or showing leadership. So it could be as simple as an assessment piece for the kids to go, oh. But I guess as the professional, we're setting the stage, what we allow and disallow in our classroom, which our gym is our classroom. So to set that stage, that when they come in, they know.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine was just that differentiated learning and personalized learning is as much a part of phys ed as it is any other class.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you look at this statement, I'm pretty sure she did not have any joyful experiences in her phys ed, to bring it back there. So, here's another one. I have come to a frightening conclusion. I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and a child humanized or dehumanized. Maybe let's just throw out some thoughts open-eyed, because as usual, I'm running out of time. But
I completely agree.
yeah, you have an incredible responsibility. I used to tell them when I was still teaching in the gym and in the classroom, and I had student teachers come in, I always used to tell them, you know what? If you love either your subject area or teaching in general, and you really love working with kids, there is no better job in the world. If you don't, get the hell out, because you should not be here. You should love this, and if you don't, find something else, because this is what happens.
Yeah, like the people who say, "Oh, I can't find a job in this area. I should go and teach."
Yeah. Summers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree with this, because I've noticed when I was younger that, you know, if I'm having a bad day, then I've got less patience with the kids, and then they think, well, how come I could do this yesterday, but now she's getting upset with me? And so I made a very concerted effort early in my career that when I'm having a bad day, I go in and I tell my kids, listen, it's a bad day for me. I don't have a lot of patience. I'm giving you the heads up right now.
That I'm gonna lose it.
You know what? You guys are just off today and wired that it's
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, we got it.
Yeah.
Like, because they can respect that you're not going to have a good day every day. And
Yeah.
as long as I find I give them that heads up, those occasional days that I have it, they're like, we can respect that. Okay, we'll tone it down today, and things are much better than if I just go in and don't want them and people start flying off the handle. They're upset or.
Well, and the cool thing about that is you can reciprocate, right? That gives them the freedom to come up to you and say, I'm just having a really rough day.
And a lot of the time
right?
they're like, oh, okay, and then they'll do something that kind of turns your day around.
Yeah.
So it works better.
Absolutely. Yeah, go
I think
ahead.
it's a really good teaching opportunity too. The whole self-regulation thing is, okay, I'm out of my zone today. What can I do? Okay, I'm out of my zone. I'm going to try to get back into my zone, and this is what I'm going to do. You're teaching kids so much by showing them that, we're not in our zone all the time, but we can do this to get into it, and they can maybe have some suggestions for you, or when they're out of their zone, that you can sort of help them get back into their zone too.
Yeah.
And the whole co-regulation thing is just huge and very powerful.
Exactly. Yeah.
The phrase activity or humor, I think back to my beginning teaching, I put some work beginning teachers in the fine line that exists between humor and dissimility.
Yeah.
So we got to be very careful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason I chose this quote in this particular session is because you have a decision to make in terms of, and maybe I'll just throw this out to you. What do you think, or what is your purpose? What is your main reason for teaching physical education? What do you want to do? Why do you do it? That's going to impact what you choose to do. If you are teaching phys ed because you want every single kid to be the fittest perfection of body type they can be, that's going to be different than if you're teaching for joyous experience. So I'd encourage you to examine for yourself, what's your motivation, what's your purpose, what do you see the purpose of phys ed being? And I'm going to lead into one more piece which will give you an idea or a thought. But we do have an incredible amount of power in terms of what we do. You also have a fair bit of autonomy in your own classroom and in your gymnasium to do what you need to do. So there's a lot of responsibility there. Last quote. This is from Scott Kretschmar, who's done a lot of work on delight and joy in movement. So I'll just go through this. We watch children delight in movement, often when they are given only the slightest provocation, sometimes without any provocation at all. With that intensity in place, learning the skills, attitudes, and mores of various movement domains goes more quickly. Young players grow apace with their increasingly complex play environments. Physical spaces for elementary school children, or any school children, become personal spaces for exploring, discovering, expressing, inventing, and creating. And you're going to see those last words come up again when we talk assessment later this morning, because that's pretty much the revised Bloom's taxonomy right there. What do you think? Maybe a different way to approach things. Joyce? Have you ever heard a kid running out to the playground going, come on, let's increase our cardio. Hey, let's go on to monkey bars because my upper body strength really sucks and I need to improve it. Go ahead.
There's a lot to be said for free play.
Mm-hmm.
Not adult imposed agendas, structure, rules, things like that. That's where the exploring and creativity and everything happens.
Yeah, and providing those opportunities.
One of my favorite athletes is Michael Jordan. And the thing that he said that always stuck with me when I was a kid was, play for the love of it. Play for the love of the game. Everything else comes after. Like that free play thing, just go out and shoot. Who cares if you're doing it right?
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the areas that researchers are telling us doesn't happen in a lot of families, particularly even before they come to school. Spending more time sedentary in front of screens. So kids don't have this opportunity to be inventive or creative, or they're regimented. We were talking about that yesterday. Parachute, helicopter.
Yeah.
So I think we really need educating our teachers, our schools, our parents about the importance of that creative play.
Absolutely.
Well,
Colin?
it's in the program studies there too. It's alternative environments, showing kids that they can experience activity and in different areas, not just the gymnasium. Like we said it here, like if you just focus on all your time is in the gym, well, the students are thinking, well, I can't be active unless I'm in the gym.
Sure.
Well, it's a lie because you can go to the playground.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a high rate of late, like a lot of students being late in the morning, so I decided last year to have gym first period. I didn't have anyone like
Nice.
It was amazing. And we went outside a lot because I didn't
You should try have math first period this year and see what happens.
I didn't have the gym every period in the morning, first period, so we went outside a lot. And I just noticed a lot more joy in my classroom when we came back in to start the day. Just a lot more joy.
Yeah. And it's a decision you make on how you're going to teach. And with this piece too, and I'll go to the next piece. So if you, just to compare two basic perspectives, because right now in our society, there's a huge emphasis on getting more physical activity, but it's all for health. We want efficiency, or do we want meaning? Do we want meaningful movement? And someone said it earlier today, but I've always been convinced that movement is important, but over the last number of years, I've become utterly convinced that movement is elemental to who we are as human beings. We cannot be humans without some form of movement. And if you go into growth and development studies and perception studies, there's some amazing things in there on how moving towards things, how movement stimulates your entire body and mind and helps you grow and develop. So when we move towards this way, and that idea of that deep play, the creative stuff, it's different than habit formation. But what ends up happening when you get into the deep play and the joyous movement is it becomes a habit without saying you should make this a habit, right? It's interesting, and we are very much focused on the obesity crisis, okay? And there's no denying that we have an issue. But personally and professionally, I don't think the way to deal with that is to say, okay, because what happens with lots of people, I'm overweight, people are telling me I need to do something, I'm gonna run. Frickin' hate running, but I'm gonna run. It's not gonna last. Now, you may have a mentor that runs with you, and you may say, oh, this is kind of good, and I'm gonna walk, and I'm gonna run, I'm gonna go this way. But that experience has to have an element of joy for you to keep doing it, to be successful. If you don't have that, you're gonna say no. So you run, and then running's hard. I was listening to a comedian the other day, an Irishman, and he said, talking about Canada, he said, you guys all run, go for a run. Who's chasing you? And so this is that piece. So the foundation of, and this is all from Scott Kretschmar, and he's done a lot of work on this, as I mentioned, and this is just incidentally where I'd like to try and take my own area of research and try to figure out how we can do this better. It's that idea of the enjoyment of movement, okay? So education is, we learn more through play than by work. And for kids, the two are not different. You ever watch kids build a sandcastle? They're working their butts off, but they're playing. That meaning piece, so that intrinsic motivation, we all know that's more powerful, but how do you flick the switch in somebody else? You can't. That's why it's intrinsic. So how can we get there? For me, I believe that if we put people in positive, joyful experiences, they will long to have more positive, joyful experiences. John Dewey was kind of the father of public education and this philosopher on education, big on experience, and talks about you can either have educative experience, which essentially means you do something and you want to do it again because it was a good experience, or you have uneducative experiences which make you not want to do any more of that. I would argue that Jessica Oline, with the Slate.com article, had an uneducative experience with phys ed. We want our children, our students, to have educative experiences with phys ed so that they seek more, both in the class. We want them to take those electives in high school. More importantly, we want them to choose those electives in life as we go forward. And then the developmental piece. And I'm not sure, again, yesterday how much you got into all the issues around physical literacy, but one of the big things is there's not an end point. Physical literacy is for everyone, whether you are in a wheelchair, whether you're 93 and in a senior citizens home, there's different permutations of physical literacy. And so we play our way to good health at 70, just as we did at age 7. Hey, I went for a hike 2 days ago with my family. We did Wilcox Pass in the Columbia ice fields, and my dad, who's 75, was up there and enjoying himself. Now, he hikes slower than I do, partly because my dog is pulling me forward the whole time, but he has that element of physical literacy as well, right? He needs to do that. So here's your challenge. I'm going to give you 2 challenges. And this is directly, again, out of Scott Cressmore. This is not my words, but can you find ways to prioritize a life-enhancing brand of phys ed? But then you need to compromise. So yes, there's some utilitarian. Yes, if you move more, you'll be healthier. We know that. So can you promote health for those who need to be talked into moving? In other words, you need to figure things out. You need to teach from a perspective of joy, but you need to realize that there's some people who want to have that utilitarian piece. So you need to be able to speak both languages, essentially. The last challenge I'll leave you with is, one's a statement, one's a challenge, so not the last challenge. But I'll just read that piece there. This is part of the reaction to Jessica O'Lean's article, but I used to ask my students in the secondary phys ed class to do a media study and look at phys ed in the media. And you know what? We suck in the media. We're horrible. All the stereotypes are there, right? It's for women, you're either the butch lesbian phys ed teacher or you're the hot phys ed teacher that everybody wants. For the men, you're pretty much the football shorts, the big belly and the whistle tied up, Mr. Woodcock, if you've seen that lovely movie. Hey, that's who you are. And so there's no opportunity. So what I asked the students to write about was discuss what phys ed looks like in popular media, and now how is this going to impact your students' view of you? And this was one, I'm paraphrasing because I wasn't able to keep his paper, but one of my students wrote this brilliant paper and basically said, yep, all these stereotypes are out there. Doesn't matter a bit once the students walk into my gym. Because in the end, it won't matter what stereotypes or myths my students have seen and or believe about phys ed. Once they walk into my gym and experience my phys ed, they'll know that that's not me. Humiliation? Not in my gym. Athlete-centric? Not in my gym. Gender-biased? Not in my gym. Sports only? Not in my gym. Picked last? Not in my gym. So this is your challenge for Margaret Whitehead, who's pretty much the founder of physical literacy. Is our mission or challenge is to do all we can to enable all to make progress on their individual physical literacy journey.